we covered the Copilot capabilities of data pipeline and identified that the Copilot capability can be used for multiple purposes. You can create a complex pipeline. You can debug the error with respect to the pipelines, and you can summarize the pipelines. Post that, we identified the different types of triggers, event-based triggers that are available for the data pipeline, on how a pipeline can be scheduled based on time-based aspect, and a pipeline can be scheduled based on some event-based aspect. Now, the event-based aspects were of 4 types. One is Azure Blob Storage, another is Workspace, another was OneLake, and the final was job-related events. Now, every type of event trigger has its own specific criteria and use case that we had gone across. But the aspect with respect to data pipeline copy activity is it just transfers the data as is from one location to another without any transformations. So in case if you need any transformations to be done on the data and via low code, no code way, a UI based way, then you have something called as Dataflow Gen 2. Now the Dataflow Gen 2 is a part of the data factory experience within Microsoft Fabric. Now, if you see here, under the type, I have 2 types of Dataflow Gen 2. Dataflow Gen 2 and Dataflow Gen 2 CI/CD. Because whenever we create a Dataflow Gen 2, we get an option whether to enable the Git integration deployment pipeline public API scenarios. Now, Dataflow Gen 2 came into Microsoft Fabric in the initial phase itself. But in the initial phase of Dataflow Gen 2 that were created, that did not support Git integration and other aspects. So the Dataflow Gen 2 that were created without that tick mark enabled, or those were created before Microsoft enabled the CI/CD and Git integration for the Dataflow Gen 2 functionalities, for them you would be able to see the type as Dataflow Gen 2. And those Dataflow Gen 2 cannot be Git enabled, integrated, meaning even if I enable the Git integration at the workspace settings, this Dataflow Gen 2 wouldn't be supported, whereas this Dataflow Gen 2 code would be synchronized into the Git repository. Hence, going forth, whenever you create any new Dataflow Gen 2, it is better to enable that feature and functionality. And the old Dataflow Gen 2, in case if you all have created within your organization, better to export the JSON of that and reintegrate that code of Dataflow Gen 2 into the CI/CD or Git enabled Dataflow Gen 2. Now, we also discussed something called as Dataflow Gen 1. If you see, we have a Dataflow Gen 1 and a Dataflow Gen 2. Both are used to prep, clean, and transform the data. Correct. Now let's go ahead and create a Dataflow Gen 2, Gen 1. Now here, if you see, when you try to create a Dataflow Gen 1, it states that Dataflow Gen 2 significantly enhances the data ingestion capabilities over Dataflow Gen 1 and has multiple new features such as output destination. In Dataflow Gen 2, we saw that after the transformation, you can load the data into some specific set of destinations that are very limited over to the destinations that are available in the copy activity. Now, those destinations were the OneLake objects like Fabric Warehouse, Fabric SQL Database Lakehouse. And in case of external, you had KQL Database, Azure SQL Database, and recently SharePoint has come into preview mode. So imagine that if you want to copy into some Azure Blob Storage or some destination that is not supported in the Dataflow Gen 2, but you need to do those transformations before copying into Azure Dataflow, Azure Blob Storage or some other location, then you use the Lakehouse or some of the destination that are supported in Dataflow Gen 2 as a staging layer, load the transformation into that staging layer, and then copy that data via copy activity from that staging layer object to the necessary destination that is supported by the copy activity. Then you have fast copy enabled for better integration and some enhanced refresh history and diagnostic experience that are available in Dataflow Gen 2, which are not available in Dataflow Gen 1. So now let me go ahead and create a Dataflow Gen 1 only. I want to go ahead and create a Dataflow Gen 1 only to show you all the difference. Eventually, Microsoft is suggesting for everyone to move away from Dataflow to move away to Dataflow Gen 2 itself. Now, I need to get the data. So in order to get the data, I need to connect to some of the source, correct? So in this case, let me connect to, let's say, my Azure SQL database itself. Now this would state that there's already an existing connection that I have. Now it would try to connect to that. And since that database is in pause state, it takes a couple of minutes for it to activate. So now I am able to see all the tables that I want to get the data from. So I'll select address, customer and customer address, product, product category, product description, and product model. Now, let me click on, so I have selected the tables. Now let me click on transform data, meaning I want to do some data transformations. So the UI appeal of Dataflow Gen 1 and Dataflow Gen 2 are the same because it's the same aspect that it does, data transformations, correct? Wherein you have a UI visualization, a pictorial representation of the transformation. This represent the tables. You can create new parameters, etc. So now under address, let me filter the corresponding data, filter to the 3 rows. So it would automatically add a filtered row aspect. Then let me remove this column, correct? So all the necessary transformations that I'm doing is getting captured in the applet step, similar to what we had taken a look with respect to the Dataflow Gen 2, correct? But the one major thing is, unlike Dataflow Gen 2, wherein you had the add destination capability, here you do not have that add destination capability, correct? Now this would show the data view of the corresponding data that is already present. The diagram view is this, the pictorial representation. And this is the query settings. And similarly, you have the advanced editor aspect as well. So now I can click on save and close. This is validating all my queries that are present in the Dataflow Gen 1 and saving the corresponding Dataflow Gen 1. Now I want to preserve it as Dataflow Gen 1 and save. So now every table that I selected is like a separate entity within that corresponding data flow, Gen 1. In case if I want to go and check the details, correct, I can click on the corresponding drop down and it would provide me the list of columns and its corresponding data types. Now, in case if I sort by, you can see the difference in this symbol. Correct. This is how Dataflow Gen 1 is represented, and this is how Dataflow Gen 2 is represented. Now, if I click here, I can export the JSON of the code that is present in the Dataflow Gen 1. So this is the corresponding data flow Gen 1 code, wherein all the steps that I had created is preserved. Like it shows me that I queried the address table, the customer address table, all the tables. Then within address table, I selected specific I filtered specific rows. I removed the columns. Correct. So all the data transformation and relationship, etc., are being preserved in the JSON file. Now I can go and check in the, now there is an option wherein you can save your data flow Gen 1 as a data flow Gen 2. For folks who want to migrate away from data flow Gen 1, data flow Gen 1 to data flow Gen 2, there is a save as data flow Gen 2 feature that you take a look afterwards. Then you can also, under the settings, check the refresh history. As of now, it's not scheduled, but in case if you want to schedule the refresh, you can click on enablement and then you can either schedule it daily or weekly. Now tags are the common concept that we all have. Now it is asking whether you want to have the enhanced compute engine settings or the original common aspect itself, depending on the requirements. Now, since this database is connected via credential, it is asking me to identify that corresponding credential in case if we want to overtake it. Now, since this data flow has been created by this account, this is the owner. But in case if some other user logs in into this who has contributor access, he'll get an option of takeover. The concept of takeover that we had seen for other offerings within Microsoft Fabric. So this is with respect to the data flow Gen 1, correct? And you have an option wherein you can save it as the data flow Gen 2. But the data flow Gen 2 that it would save would have by default the Git integration deployment pipelines enabled, because this functionality of saving as data flow Gen 2 needs this functionality. So in case if the downstreams or the customers want to migrate from their old data flow Gen 1 capability to data flow Gen 2 capability, there is an option wherein you all can save it as and then automatically get rid of the data flow Gen 1. So now it created a copy of the corresponding set of transformations as a data flow Gen 2 itself, and it is asking me as credentials are required. I need to authenticate. I need to configure the connection first time, correct? But if you see, since it's the same connection that I have used for all the connections are auto getting corrected. But imagine if I would have had different data sources from different set of different tables from different sources, I would have had to re-authenticate to every different type of data that is available via managed connections. But once I transformed the set of changes, or I saved this as data flow Gen 2, all the necessary transformations that I had done in the data flow Gen 1 got auto migrated into the data flow Gen 2. Correct? But you have now an additional functionality of adding a data destination if need be. Now the other major changes, unlike data flow Gen 2, which has Copilot capability, data flow Gen 1 does not support that. Correct. Let's take a look whether there is Copilot aspect within data flow Gen 1. Can you see? Let me click on edit tables to take me to the UI view of the changes. Correct. Here, is there any Copilot experience that I'm able to see? No. Correct. So the Copilot experience is supported only for, until unless I cancel this, I won't be able to switch across. So discard. The Copilot capability is available in the Dataflow Gen 2 experience itself. So this is how Microsoft enables users to migrate Dataflow Gen 1 to Dataflow Gen 2 and make use of those capabilities, advanced features and functionalities that are available in Dataflow Gen 2. Any queries up till now?
Nandan, in what case people will opt for Gen 1?
There is no need of Gen 1.
Yeah.
Basically, Gen 1 was the initial case when Power BI had started, meaning after Power BI had started couple of years, wherein rather than having all set of transformations, repeated set of see, imagine that I have multiple Power BI reports. In all the Power BI reports, I am doing the same set of transformations, correct? But unfortunately, that could not be shared across. I had to reciprocate that logic across everywhere, correct? So rather than reciprocating the logic across everywhere, Microsoft enabled that functionality of data flow, correct? At that time, there was only one data flow, so it was called data flow. So within that data flow, you could do the transformations and use that as an input for your Power BI reports, correct?
Okay, got it. What is it? The
But
same Power
now,
BI data flow only.
that is Power BI data flow only. That has been now renamed as data flow Gen 1. And now the new data flows that are getting created are renamed as data flow Gen 2.
Okay,
So
okay,
the
got
Power
it.
BI data flows that are present across organizations are called as data flow Gen 1 in today's terminology. But as I said, you can create data flow Gen 2 even without a destination, similar to how we have in data flow Gen 1, and you can reuse that in your corresponding Power BI reports as well. Hence, Microsoft suggests everyone to move away from data flow Gen 1 and to data flow Gen 2. And it provides us easy way, as you need not create anything. It automatically helps you save as data flow Gen 2. And data flow, and we'll take a look whether data flow Gen 1 supports Git integration or not, correct? And the benefits of why it is beneficial to move away from data flow Gen 1 to Gen 2. And one of the major aspects is we saw, correct, the Copilot experience. And we'll take a look on how a Copilot experience work across in data flow Gen 2. Any other queries?
And both uses same engine, Power Query engine or a Spark engine?
Power Query engine only, but there are some advanced processing capabilities in Dataflow Gen 2 as that's what Microsoft states. So for better processing and better quicker transformation, the optimized engine, Microsoft suggests to come to the Dataflow Gen 2. Clear?
Yeah.
Now, yesterday we had okay. Now this save as is, can you see here? I have Dataflow Gen 2, correct? It's not CI/CD enabled because I had disabled that preview functionality. So in that option as well, you get an option to save it as Dataflow Gen 2 CI/CD part, correct? Then here, now if you check the difference between a Dataflow Gen 2 and Dataflow Gen 2 with CI/CD, you can check in the property section itself, correct? Now the Dataflow Gen 2 has similar functionalities as Dataflow Gen 1, wherein you can check the refresh history, you can export the JSON, etc. But in case of CI/CD enabled, you see some additional functionality. There is no export to JSON because it is Git integrated, so that code becomes available in your Git repository itself directly. Correct? Then you can check other aspects and you can save it. Save this as meaning create a copy of this. Correct. But you can check the schedule, the recent runs, check validation. Check validation meaning it parses your corresponding code and checks for any syntactical or other aspects. Yesterday we had executed the data flow. Okay, it was not this. It was the df sync. Correct, my fault. This we created recently. So recent runs. So you would see that this was executed yesterday at this time, and you can export the corresponding refresh history data for the same, the advanced refresh data that it provides. Correct. Let me download it and show it. Recent runs. Let me download the refresh history file. It's a CSV file that gets created, and then we can take a look with respect to that. So,
Check validation, Nandan, can you please explain one?
sorry,
Check validation option.
your voice is not clear.
Nandan, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yeah, check. Can you please explain once again, like check validation?
Check validation basically validates your, if you remember when we had created it, it validated across all your aspects, correct? Meaning it checks whether your current status, correct? Meaning whether you're, okay, let me open it. Okay, it's already open here, correct? Now the check validation here basically checks whether all your code, correct, is proper or not, meaning all the transformations, the Power Query that you added, correct, is correct or not, because you are using some syntaxes, correct, Power Query syntaxes,
Yes,
correct.
yes.
So it validates whether all your code, similar to how you had validate in the data pipelines, correct, wherein it parsed across all your JSON aspect. So this parse across all this aspect and validates whether your code is proper or not.
Okay, I got it.
And that will take a look now. So any queries with respect to data flow Gen 1 and Gen 2? If no, then let's take a look with respect to the Copilot experience here. Yesterday in the last session, we took a look with respect to the Copilot experience in the data pipeline. Today, we would take a look with respect to the Copilot experience within the data flow Gen 2. Now, as I had stated, that Copilot is basically a Gen AI tool, correct? So, with leveraging Copilot in Dataflow Gen 2, you can generate new transformation steps for an existing query itself. You can provide a summary of the query and the applied steps, or you can generate a new query itself that may include a sample data or a reference to an existing query. Now, pretty confusing terminologies are used, correct? Let's take a practical look with respect to the Copilot aspect and understand what this means. So now let's take a look with respect to this customer table, correct? Now within this customer table, I want to do some transformations, meaning I want to generate some new transformation steps for my existing query. So this is what is an existing query, the sales LT customer. Now within this existing query, I want to generate new transformation steps, correct? So now here, if you see within the customers, I have something called as Mr. and Mrs. The title corresponding to my customers, correct? I want to keep only male customers, meaning I want to filter out female customers, correct? So then I can just add a prompt that keep only male customers. Now, Copilot is smart enough to understand that Mr. meaning it scans across this data and checks on what column do I need to filter out, because have I stated that filter out on title column? No, correct. It scans across the data and identifies the column that can help me bifurcate between the gender. So the column that it was able to identify was title, and it was smart enough to understand that Mr. represents male and Mrs. represents female. Correct. And it automatically filtered out the corresponding table with male customers only. Now, can you see this undo option? I'll come to this a little later. Correct. Now imagine that if you remember, we had seen how to remove all other columns except the specific set of columns, meaning in the manual way, I can select specific set of columns, right click and click on remove other columns. Correct. But now I can just put a common prompt that keep only, let's say I want to keep only customer ID column and the name columns. Correct. So I can type keep only customer ID and name columns. Now, if you see the prompt, the customer ID column, and here it's not case sensitive. Basically, it uses a fuzzy logic. Correct. It need not be an exact prompt of the column name and name column. So it is smart enough to understand that I want to preserve the customer ID column and the first name, middle name, and the last name columns. So this is how the Copilot experience helps generate new transformation steps for an existing query. Now, once you add a new transformation step, if you want to revert the previous step, correct, there is no option. But if you click undo, here undo only helps you revert it to the original state. But you cannot undo the previous one once a new one has been created. You have to manually go and delete this step here. But now I can undo this step because this is the latest step itself. But I cannot undo this transformation once a new transformation has been added via the Copilot line. I have to manually go and delete it. So this is with respect to generating new transformation steps for an existing query itself. Now, the other Copilot experience that we had seen that I suggested was you can provide a summary of the steps. Sorry, you can provide the summary of the query and the applied steps. Correct. So now let's take a look with respect to the duplicate address. We had done so many changes yesterday. Correct. Now let me describe this query. What exactly is this query and the applied steps trying to do? So it does take a couple of time depending on the transformations that we have done. Correct. So now one way to check is to go to advanced editor and understand the Power Query. But not everyone would be familiar with this concept. Correct. So here it can automatically provide me the summary version of what all query and transformations are happening pertaining to this duplicate address. So it states that it is connected to this database and on this server. Then I selected the address table, removed the set of columns, filtered the rows based on the address ID, split the corresponding columns, etc. So it provides a natural language way of all the transformations that we have done. So in case if anyone wants to go and identify what all transformations, etc. are happening, one can go and check in the corresponding aspect, the summary aspect. So this is with respect to providing a summary of the query and its corresponding applied steps. Now finally, I stated that you can generate a new query that may include a sample data or a reference to an existing query. Query meaning a new table, correct? So now imagine that I need list of all Indian states and its capital and corresponding state code, correct? Now this is a generic data that is present across public, correct? So I can type that create a query that lists all Indian states and its capitals along with the state code. So what it would do is, since I've stated it to create a new query, it would create a new query, meaning a new table would be created here with the corresponding data that I need, since it's a publicly available data. Can you see a query got created and it contains the state code, the state name and its corresponding capital. I need not explicitly have to go and fetch the data, manually import the data. Copilot can automatically take care of that aspect. And in case if I check the advanced editor, it has created a table by hard coding the set of values. By getting that information from the internet or the model on which the corresponding Copilot has been trained. So a Copilot can help generate a new query that may include the sample data, and then you can do the transformations on this, correct? Filter out. Okay. Keep only states that begin with, let's say, G. So this would now filter out the states that begin with letter G. So it should contain Gujarat and Goa. Now I cannot undo the query that had been created. I can only undo this filter step because this was created. And now in case if I want to describe this query, it would tell me that a new table is created and the corresponding data was filtered out. So create a table based on various states. This is the source and it filtered out on the state column that contains or that begins with letter G. So this is the Copilot experience within the Dataflow Gen 2. Now, as of now, I provided you the state table, correct? In most of the cases, in most of the organization, would we even use this data? No, correct? What is the common dimensional table that is needed for almost 99% of all reporting use cases? Can anyone state to me? Which is the utmost used dimensional table across all reports?
Date.
Correct. It's the date dimension. Correct. You need the date dimension for almost all types of slicing and dicing within reporting aspects. Correct. So now let's go ahead and create a date table. Correct. So create a date table with values like here I'm explicitly okay. Correct. let me tell that create a date table that, okay. Let's understand why prompt engineering is a critical aspect in today's Copilot aspect. Correct. So I'll state that create a new query that represents a calendar table with lots of columns starting from 2020 till date. So now I have kept the prompt pretty generic, stating that I need a calendar table with lots of columns. I have not stated what data I need. Correct. I have stated the Copilot to create a table with lots of columns. Of course, you all can rename the query as well. Correct. Here it gets created by query 2 since query is duplicated now. Correct. So I can rename it as generic date prompt. Correct. So now if you see, it started from 2020 and it would be till today's date itself, till the latest date. Correct. That I can take a look with respect to that. And it created a pictorial representation of how it created. It first added day, etc. And we can take a look with respect to the advanced data as well. But if you see, it created an year column, month column, day, week, etc. Since I had not specified a specific set of columns, it added the most common aspects of that. And it can stay, and I can check that it used a start date functionality wherein it created a table ranging from 1st of January 2020 till today. Then it split it, and then you created year, month columns, day column, day of week, month name, etc. based on the corresponding set of transformations. And in case if you want to check the different steps, you can click here. It started with the start date. End date was the expression that was provided. Date list. It created a list of dates ranging from first. Then it created it as a, it converted the list to a corresponding date table. Then I added a year column based on the year value. Then a month column was added. So step by step, you can check all these steps that were created and check the overall set of transformations that did transpire. So now if you see, the prompt was very generic, correct? But now imagine that I want to create a, I want to have a specific set of columns, correct? So you have to keep the prompt correctly. So create a date table with values like date. I want the date. I want the calendar year. I want the fiscal year. I want the quarter name. I want the month name from, let's say I want to specify that I want it from September, from 1st September 2020 till date. Now, when I stated starting from 2020, it assumed to start from 1st of January 2020. But I can even specify that I want it from 1st September 2020 till date, and it would generate it. The start date would be from that aspect. And now it provided me the specific set of columns itself that I needed. So better your prompt, better would be the outcome that you would be able to see with respect to the Copilot experience in Dataflow Gen 2. So any queries up till now? So even a person who does not have any understanding of Power Query, etc., can leverage the Copilot and come to the necessary outcome. This is the power of Copilot aspect. Now, up till now, we only saw simple set of transformations, correct? Which I could have even done via normal right click, etc. So can Copilot help me in doing some complex set of transformations, correct? So let's take a look on that. So I have a product table here, correct? Now in product table, corresponding to every product, I have a standard cost column available, correct? Now imagine that I want to keep only rows. I want to keep only rows wherein the standard cost of the product is above the median value. Now, those who are familiar with mean, median, mode, these are statistical aspects, correct? Median is the middle value, one can consider as the middle value within the range of values, correct? So now here first I have to explicitly calculate the median of all the products cost and then write a logic to filter on it, correct? So this is somewhat a complicated set of transformations, but now I can write a prompt that only keep rows where the standard cost is above the median value. And if you see the prompts, it had multiple language spelling errors, etc. But Copilot is smart enough to take the correct aspect of the same. So if you see all the lower product values like 13, 3.4, since they are on the lower end, then the median value got filtered out. And only the products above the median values are preserved. And one can understand in the advanced editor that it created a custom logic wherein it identified the median out of all the values and then filtered rows wherein the standard cost is greater than the median value. Then I can even add that remove duplicate rows. In case if there are any duplicate rows, then just typing the remove duplicate rows, the Copilot is smart enough to go ahead and identify and filter out the duplicate rows in case if there are any. So any queries up till now?
So Nandan, can we use Copilot for entire end-to-end data flow creation?
No, Copilot is for every specific queries, correct? Imagine you can create a new query, but imagine you are getting data, correct? You do have an option to get the data as well, correct? Get data from. But see, remember there are some cost associated with the Copilot. The capacity utilization cost that we'll see eventually, correct? So when you can do a manual step of getting the data, that even a person who does not understand can normally follow the UI approach, correct? So is there a need for me to utilize the Copilot and unnecessarily burn the CPU capability? No, correct?
Correct.
I can leverage Copilot for complex set of transformations for which I do not have an understanding. Just because you have a Copilot does not mean let's make use of it. See, in a data pipeline, just to run the pipeline, did I need to use Copilot? No, correct? I could have directly clicked on run the pipeline because the time that it took me to print, run the pipeline, execute it, I could have easily clicked on the run the aspect. So it's up to you all. You can use Copilot, but does it make sense to use Copilot? That you need to be smart enough because it does burn the capacity as well.
Okay.
Now, imagine that, see, in today's aspect, most of the data engineer folks are capable in the SQL world rather than in the Power Query, correct? So imagine that I have this product model table, correct? I want to group, I want the I want to group this table by name, and I want the count corresponding to the name that are available. Correct? Meaning I want to group by. So in this case, usually what select query would I use? I would use select. Correct. I would use select column name, comma, count star from my corresponding table, that is sales LT dot product model group by name. Correct. But imagine I want to have this output here. Correct. So, but I'm familiar with SQL. I wrote the SQL query, but I want to have the Power Query transformation of it. Correct. I can write translate the following SQL query to M query. M meaning the these corresponding set of transformation that we have. Now, Copilot is smart enough to translate the SQL query and convert it into the corresponding M query. Can you see the output? Corresponding to every product, I'm getting its count. Since every product model is unique, I'm only getting 111. There is no duplicates. Correct? But imagine if there would have been duplicate values, then I would have got this 2 or multiple set of values. So one can state that Copilot in Fabric basically enhances your productivity, unlocks profound insights, and facilitates the creation of custom AI experiences tailored to your data. Correct? Now, as a component of Copilot in Fabric experience, Copilot in Data Factory empowers one to use natural language prompts that we have been providing to articulate their requirements for data integration solutions using Dataflow Gen 2. And especially Copilot in your Data Factory operates like a subject matter expert, collaborating with you to design your data flows. So this is in general with respect to Copilot capabilities of Data Factory experience. There are some more features and functionalities that Microsoft is adding into Copilot and it would keep on enhancing this functionality. Correct? Recently, in a couple of months back in the Microsoft build, Microsoft had demoed a functionality wherein, see, in the Copilot, I was providing prompts. Correct? But imagine that I create a rough, see, as a data architect or a solution architect, we usually have a flowchart already created. Correct? How I want to design my pictorial representation of my flow, which we then incorporate as a code. So now what Microsoft is doing had done is couple of months demoed is you had a pictorial image of your data pipeline. You provided that image as an input and Microsoft automatically created the data pipeline similar to that image. So that's next level of experience that Microsoft is providing with respect to the code creation. So any queries up till now? So this completes your data factory experience across Microsoft Fabric, which includes Dataflow Gen 2 and data pipelines. So any queries on the overall data factory experience? So data factory experience is a low code, no code way of transforming and moving your data. and managing your data. Now, in my Copilot workspace, I had multiple if you see, I can trigger Dataflow Gen 2 CI/CD enabled and Dataflow Gen 2 non-CI/CD enabled pipelines as well via the Dataflow activity in data pipeline. But Dataflow Gen 1, if you see, I had a Dataflow Gen 1, correct here. I had DF Gen 1, correct. Now that DF Gen 1 is not present. So any queries? Yes or no? So I can see that I have 1, 2, 3, 4 Dataflow Gen 2 in the Copilot, and I am able to see 1, 2, 3. So team, any queries up till now?
No, Nandan.
Okay.
No.
Okay, one miss point I suggest a correction. What I meant was, if you see here, correct, it is providing me Dataflow Gen 2 with CI/CD and Dataflow Gen 1. Dataflow Gen 2 that is not CI/CD enabled, correct? That is this one, Copilot DF does not become visible since it's not Git integrated. That you have to call it explicitly via REST APIs. Whereas you can trigger a Dataflow Gen 1 as well. It's this one. Hence, this old one we need to migrate. So before the next call, before the next session, I'll have a workspace with Git integrated and understand the difference between Dataflow Gen 1, Dataflow Gen 2 without CI/CD and Dataflow Gen 2 with CI/CD. Which all can be Git integrated, which all can be triggered via data pipelines, etc. We'll take a look with respect to all those in the next call because I do not have the Git integration enabled for this workspace and I need to pause my Fabric capacity. So this completes the data factory experience within Microsoft Fabric. Now, up till now, we saw a low code, no code way, but I still had to configure some job for data synchronization, correct? Within Microsoft Fabric. Now, imagine that in the new items, correct? Under get data, we covered copy job. I'll come to copy job, correct? Data pipeline, data flow Gen 1, data flow Gen 2, event stream is what we saw yesterday, correct? When I was creating an event stream for the trigger. So basically, it captures, transforms, and routes the real-time events to various destinations in the desired format with no code experience. Then you have something called as mirroring. And this is what will come next. So let's go ahead and mirror the Azure SQL database. So what does this do? You can easily replicate the data from an existing source into an analytics friendly format. What does that mean? Let me click on mirror database. See, There are multiple types of mirroring that are present here, correct? There is mirroring Azure SQL database, mirroring SQL Server, Snowflake database, Azure database for PostgreSQL, etc. Correct? Most of that functionality is common. So I'll be demoing for the Azure SQL database itself. Since it's Azure SQL database, it is asking me to select one of the Azure SQL database. I'll be selecting this Copilot database to mirror. So here also, in case if you log in into the Azure portal, within the Azure SQL database, you would see that there is mirror database in preview, in Fabric, in preview, correct? So this is what this is about, wherein you mirror this database, Azure SQL database, into the Fabric ecosystem. So now, within this database, I have these many set of tables, correct? Now, if you see, there is an warning symbol. Basically, while mirroring, there are some limitations that you cannot mirror certain columns, that certain data types and the columns associated with those data types. Now, the sales LT address table contains some user defined type, correct? Hence, it cannot be synchronized into the corresponding Fabric ecosystem, correct? Let's go ahead and check the database, correct? Let me log in into that database. So for now, by the time I'm doing that, let me first go ahead and enable this mirroring so that we understand what is happening. So there are some limitations with respect to unsupported data types, and there are some other aspects as well, correct? Now, automatically mirror future tables, meaning imagine that if any new table is added, it should automatically be included in the mirroring aspect, and I can explicitly remove the tables that I do not want to mirror. So I do not want to mirror product model description, correct? Since I removed one of the table, it automatically disabled this because I want to explicitly select which all tables I want to select, correct? So in case in future, if I go ahead and add some new tables within the database, and if I want to mirror that into Fabric, I have to explicitly come and edit or select that corresponding table. So now I want these tables to be mirrored into the Microsoft Fabric, correct? So now let me go ahead and connect it. Now I want to provide the database name that gets created in my destination. Destination meaning Fabric, correct? And I'll click on create mirror database. So now what Microsoft Fabric is doing is, it is creating a mirror database. It is creating the SQL Analytics endpoint of it and configuring the replication. And then once it configures the replication, it starts creating the replication. So now let me go to this aspect. And earlier there was a restriction that in case if you want to mirror any table, the table should contain a primary key. What do I mean by primary key? Can you see here a key symbol besides the sales address ID table? It means is the unique. This table's uniqueness is defined by this address ID. But that limitation that only the tables that contain the primary key can be mirrored was removed. And hence you can see that the dbo.test table that does not contain any primary key was also available for mirroring. So that limitation has been overcome. Now let's take a look. So if you see, the mirroring has been configured, but no data has been landed, meaning the replication is starting now. Correct? So if you see, the replication is still running. Correct? And I am yet to get the number of rows that have been replicated and when was the replication last completed. So the data synchronization or replication from the Azure SQL database into the Fabric is happening. Now here I am seeing the terminology called replication. So replication means the data is physically getting copied from Azure SQL database into the Fabric ecosystem. So unlike shortcut, wherein your data was physically still present in the source, but was logically getting replicated in the Fabric ecosystem. Logically meaning the data virtualization concept, meaning though the data is physically present in your source, but you are still able to query the data without duplicating the data. That was shortcut. But mirroring, as the name suggests, physically replicates or copies your data from the corresponding source. In this case, we have selected Azure SQL database. But you saw, right, there were other sources like SQL Server or Snowflake, etc. It physically copies the data of those tables into the Fabric ecosystem. Similar to how a copy activity does. But in case of copy activity, I am responsible to physically set up the copy and the replication and scheduling the job. But in case of database mirror or this mirroring, the mirroring job, a low code, meaning I just had to come and click on mirror. Did I had to create any replica, copy activity, anything? No, I just had to click on mirror and it automatically ensured that the mirroring is created. And now I can see that for the product category table, overall 41 rows got replicated and the synchronization last happened at this time. Correct? Now let me go and query the product category table. Select all from sales LT dot product category. Correct? I can see. Okay, my fault. Select count. It would show me that there are 41 rows. Hence, the corresponding 41 rows got replicated. So this is the power of Copilot. Now, let me query the dbo.test table. Select all from dbo.test table. So this contains 2 columns and 3 rows. Correct? Now let me duplicate this tab and let's see how the mirror database looks and how we can query. So if you see here, I had selected these many replications. Correct? Now in case if I go to the workspace, you can see that I have a mirror database. Now corresponding to that mirror database, I have a semantic model and a SQL Analytics endpoint. Correct? Can you give me 1 minute? So in the Copilot, in the mirror database, a front-end view and the corresponding SQL Analytics and the semantic model view is getting created. Correct? So now in case if I click on this, it will take me to the replication aspect. Correct? But if I have to query the data, I can go into the SQL Analytics endpoint view. So let me go to the SQL Analytics endpoint view. Let me click on new query. It created the replica, correct? Some of the tables were in DBO, some of the tables were in sales LT, correct? So it created a replica or a mirror of that database. Select all from dbo.test. Now let me change it to test. Would this get executed? No, because it is SQL Analytics endpoint. SQL Analytics endpoint is case sensitive. So now I can see that my data got replicated 1, 2, 3, 5, 2, 3. That was present in my Azure SQL database. So now my replication is in running state. So now let me tweak the data a bit. Update dbo.test set C1 column equal to 5 where C1 equal to 1. Okay, my fault. I am executing in the SQL Analytics endpoint. I wanted to update here. So now I updated the corresponding test table with the corresponding data. Correct. So now C1 column got updated from 1 to 5. Correct. Now let me execute the query here. It is still showing me 1 because if I come and check here, the replication, correct, is still is 903 time itself when the original replication got created. Correct. So it takes couple of minutes for the data to the change data to replicate in the corresponding Fabric ecosystem. Let's come here after a span of 2 to 3 minutes and we'll see that the last completed synchronization time of this table would have been updated. Once I see that that has been updated, okay. Can you all see? The synchronization time got updated from 9:03 to 9:10, meaning it hardly took 1 to 2 minutes for the data to synchronize. But here it shows that rows replicated are 4. But I only have 3 rows here. Correct? I only have 3 rows here. Does that mean I'll have 4 rows here now? No, it got updated. The rows replicated contains, earlier it had replicated that row. Correct? But then it was an update. So according to that, it is considering it as a new row itself. But it provides me the latest set of time and the latest status of that data. So now in the SQL Analytics endpoint, if I want to query the table, I'll see 3 rows only. 5, 5, 2, 2, 3, 3. 5, 5, 2, 2, 3, 3. So this is the concept of mirroring, wherein you are physically mirroring your data from the respective source into the Fabric ecosystem. Now, in case if I want to configure replication, meaning change the replication, correct? Meaning if I want to remove certain table or add certain tables, I can click on configure changes. So now let me create a table. Create table dbo.replica demo C1 nvarchar 255 C2 int C3 varchar 50. Correct. So now let me insert some data. Insert into dbo.replica demo. Select A, comma 1, comma B. So now in case if I execute this, select all from dbo.replica demo. 1 row is there. Now let me go to my mirrored functionality here. Click on configure replication. It is trying to load all the tables that are present in the source. So it just take a couple of minutes. It provides me the list of tables that are already mirrored and which are not mirrored. Correct. So now imagine that in the initial itself, I would have selected all the tables. Then in case if I check mark this, any new table that I add automatically gets enabled into mirroring. But here I have to explicitly select since that property was not available. Now, if you see sales LT product model, correct? Let's query this table, correct? Eventually in a minute. You can see that catalog description XML is not replicated. So now I'm configuring the replication for the new table, and it would become available here once that replication gets done. Now, let me query this product model table. Select all from sales LT dot product model. Now, if you see the catalog description, it contains an XML type of value, correct? Now, let me query that in my SQL Analytics endpoint. Can you see the this value? And this value didn't get synchronized because for the product model, the data type for the name is a user defined data type. Hence, it's a name data type. Correct. Name is not a user. It's a user defined data type, not a specific data type that inbuilt data type that Microsoft provides. Hence, it didn't get replicated. So there are a couple of limitations with respect to mirroring. One of the limitations with respect to primary key constraint that has been removed, but some of the data type columns are synchronization is not supported, which is still active. And hence, in the product model table, the name and catalog description column are not getting mirrored in the corresponding mirrored database because of those limitations. So this is the concept of mirroring. So even without the need of setting any scheduled job, or even without the need of any scheduled job, even writing any code, even a JSON, even a UI based code like data pipeline, I'm able to synchronize the data in near real time from my source into my Fabric ecosystem. This is what mirroring is. Any queries? Yes or no? Okay. So in today's case study, what I expect you all to do is create an Azure SQL database that you might have already created. Create a Azure SQL database replica, correct? Then pause your Fabric capacity, correct? Do some changes in the tables data, correct? And then resume back your Fabric capacity and check whether the data would be replicated once your Fabric capacity is resumed, or is the replication done. So make some mirror your database. Once it is completely mirrored, pause the capacity. Make some updates in your Azure SQL database. Wait for 15 to 20 minutes. Then resume your capacity. And then come and check whether the replication is happening automatically post you resume the capacity, or do you have to manually resume the replication. And if it is automatic, then check, was it synchronized post the fabric capacity got resumed, or was it synchronizing when it was paused as well? That would be your case study for today to understand the concept of mirroring. So this is another low code, no code way of moving your data into the Fabric ecosystem in near real time. Now, one final thing that we see is with respect to today session is the copy job. You saw something called as copy job, correct? Let me click on what the copy job is. Let me create a copy job. Copy job can be considered similar to your copy activity in the data pipeline, wherein you choose a source. So for now, let me select a sample data, correct? Let me select the diabetes data as my source. So this is similar to the copy activity itself, wherein, okay, it is taking time. So this was my source. I want to load it into a destination called POC Lake. Within that, I want to upload it as a file, or I want to upload it as a table. I want to create it as a table. I want to create it as a table. Here it is telling me to append the data, but rather than append the data, I want it to overwrite. And I want to do the mapping. The destination, it would create a diabetes table, or I want to create it as any new name that I want to create. Next. So do you want a full copy or an incremental copy? Now, incremental copy is full copy, meaning imagine that all your data in the source you want to copy into your destination on a daily basis. That is what we call as full copy. Incremental copy is only the copy the changes that are different than what was last copied. Imagine yesterday I got 3 sales done. I copied all those 3 sales today in my sales records into my destination. Tomorrow, 2 new additional sales records got added. So in my source, there are total 5 rows. So imagine in tomorrow's job, you synchronize all the 5 rows from your source to your destination again. That is what we call as full copy. But imagine that if you are just copying the delta of the changes, the 2 additional records that got added tomorrow, rather than the entire synchronization, that is what we call as incremental copy or delta copy. Now, why is this showing me disabled? Because it is not available for the selected source and destination. Correct? What does that mean? Let's take a look with respect to this. But after we understand this copy job, so once I create this copy job, do I want the job to run immediately or on the particular schedule? So do I want to run this once, or do I want to run it on schedule? Correct? So one can consider copy job similar to copy activity itself within the data pipeline, but this is a fast copy compared to the copy activity, because here you also have the functionality of incremental aspect, which in the copy data activity you have to explicitly create your own logic, whereas Microsoft here provides you that template itself here. So now for me, I want to run this only once. So if you see, it creates a source to destination flow. And here it is providing me that it's a full copy. And the execution is in progress as of now. So this is, one can consider this similar to a copy activity. But then what is the difference between the copy activity and the copy job? In case of copy activity, I can parameterize the connection details and other aspects. Let me go to the copy assistant. Can you see here? Isn't the copy assistant here similar to what I did for the, up till now the copy activity that I created was leveraging add to canvas, correct? But now I can use copy assistant, correct, here as well, wherein let me take the sample data, the diabetes data itself. So the copy job got executed and I can here I do not have any specific date column. Do remember this point that I said, I do not have any specific date column here. Destination would be my POC lake. I want to load it as a table, load to a new table as diabetes. Diabetes underscore 123. It is providing me the respective mappings. Next, save and run. Now, in case of, okay, deactivate other activities that are not needed. Run, save and run. Okay, because I was not able to save because there were other activities involved that were not present. But the copy activity is similar, the same aspect, correct? But in case of copy activity, one can parameterize the source and the other aspect. But in case of the copy job activity, there is no option for me. And it did not provide me that incremental aspect in the copy activity while creating it. But that was present in the copy job aspect. So in case if you want to create one or two jobs that you want to have explicitly for incremental or other aspect, a hard-coded version, you can leverage the copy job aspect. But in case if you want to have some metadata-driven framework or parameterized aspect, you can leverage the data pipeline copy activity. Here you cannot define any parameters or anything. Everything is hard-coded itself. So this is the copy job aspect. So up till now, we saw the data fact, a low-code, no-code way of synchronizing and doing the data transformations within the Fabric ecosystem. But what if I want to do my own custom set of transformations, which are not easily available via UI UX route? So for that, you have something called as notebooks. And that is what we would be taking a look in the next session. So any queries?